Touch the link. This is Tibet This Week, a weekly news on Tibet, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and the Central Tibetan Administration. The headlines for today. Tibetans mourn and condole the demise of Sushma Swaraj. As long as China is relevant, Tibet is also relevant too, says the Central Tibetan Administration's President, Dr. Lobsang Sengye. President of the Central Tibetan Administration delivers the 7th annual lecture of the Indian Association of Foreign Affairs Correspondents. His Holiness the Dalai Lama hails India's ancient tradition and marks its relevance in today's world. Visiting United States Congressional Delegation ensures continued support to Tibet. His Holiness the Dalai Lama, the President of the Central Tibetan Administration and the Speaker of Tibetan Parliament in exile, offered condolences over the passing away of veteran Indian politician Sushma Swaraj on Tuesday this week. Srimati Swaraj enjoyed immense respect for her compassionate concern for people and her friendly demeanor. In devoting herself to the service of others, she led a very meaningful life, His Holiness the Dalai Lama said in the condolence letter sent to the late politician's family. The President of the Central Tibetan Administration, Dr. Lobsang Sengye, said he was deeply saddened to hear that the veteran Indian leader and a staunch supporter of Tibet is no more. The President of Central Tibetan Administration, Dr. Lobsang Sengye, addressed the staff and the students of Parul University in Vadodara in the Indian state of Gujarat on Wednesday this week. In his address, the President expressed gratitude to the government and people of India for the love and kindness they have shown, not only by hosting Tibetans for the last 60 years, but doing the most they could for the Tibetan freedom struggle. The President noted India as the birthplaces of several notable world leaders like Mahatma Gandhi, who was consequential advocate for non-violence, and said His Holiness the Dalai Lama is one great admirer and follower of the principles laid out by Mahatma Gandhi. We Tibetans also follow non-violence as our path to seek our basic freedom, said President Dr. Lobsang Sengye, while admitting the unique connection of India and Tibet in terms of spirituality, environment, history, and geography. Speaking on the situation inside Tibet, President Dr. Sengye pointed out that Freedom House Index report lists Tibet as the second least free country in the world for 3 consecutive years after Syria, and also noted the systematic ways in which China tries to wipe away the Tibetan identity and Tibetans' resilience in the face of China's atrocities.
And good thing is, even in Tibet, the government policy is to destroy and demolish monasteries and nunneries. But in private and social space, Tibetans are practicing Buddhism in Tibet too. So Buddhism has come back to Tibet.
Responding to a question from the audience about the growing influence of China in the international politics, Dr. Sengye warned that the countries of the world should be cautious of China in terms of their international dealings, as the situation could end up like it did in the case of Tibet. As long as China is relevant, Tibet is relevant too, said President Sengye, adding that understanding China requires an understanding of Tibet experience. A group of 15 foreign affairs journalists representing various newspapers of India, such as Asian Age, The Print, The Tribune, and The Wire, among others, gathered for an interactive session with the President of Central Tibetan Administration, Dr. Lobsang Sengye, who was invited as the chief guest to deliver the 7th annual lecture of the Indian Association of Foreign Affairs Correspondents at India International Center in New Delhi on Tuesday this week. President Dr. Sengye covered topics relating to China's growing influence in different spheres in the world, the question of His Holiness the Dalai Lama's reincarnation, Doklam issue, the possibility of India conferring His Holiness the Dalai Lama with Bharat Ratna Award, among others. Speaking of Tibet experience in relation to its forceful annexation by China, China's incursion is happening on the daily basis through political, security, education, and social interference, said President Dr. Sengye while narrating his 7 years of experience and expertise on China as the Sikyong of Central Tibetan Administration. Speaking further, President said Tibet is the prime testament of China's unprecedented influence and incursion. He noted that China is using now similar blueprint in Australia, Africa, as a matter of fact, anywhere it seeks to promote its interest.
So, then I say, look, all these things happened in Tibet 60 years ago. The blueprint the Chinese government is using in Australia or in Africa or anywhere is exactly the same thing. And people just don't get it. I was giving a talk in Mysore University or somewhere in Bangalore. There were 2 African students asked me, what do you make of all this Chinese investment in Africa? I said, oh, did they make good roads? Yes. Did they build big entertainment center? Yes. Did they take your politicians on a big trips? Yes. Journalists on trip? Yes. How do you know? I said, it happened to Tibet 60 years ago. It's happening in your country now. You know? So elite co-optation, buying all the influence makers, and slowly, step by step, you get influence.
Said President Dr. Lobsang Sengye, remarking on China's same old tactic to capture the influence makers, elite and business tycoons and influence them for its personal gain. Responding to a question on the reincarnation issue of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, President Dr. Sengye said it solely rests upon the decision of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and the Chinese appointed Dalai Lama will not be considered and respected by the Tibetans and the well-wishers of Tibet. Even when the posters of China-picked Panchen Lama is not acceptable to the people of Tibet, then how can they accept China-chosen Dalai Lama, asserted President Dr. Sengye. This is the second time President Dr. Lobsang Sengye was invited to speak at the annual lecture series. The President was the first guest to deliver the inaugural address of the first lecture series when it began 7 years ago in 2013. During a meeting with a group of Indian audience at his residence on Tuesday this week, His Holiness the Dalai Lama spoke on the relevance of India's ancient traditions in today's world. His Holiness the Dalai Lama remarked that ancient India's traditions are all about non-violence, compassion, single-pointed concentration, and analytical meditation. We do not follow faith, but we analyze, said His Holiness the Dalai Lama, which he noted was the very advice of Buddha himself.
We do not follow faith, but analyze the vipassana. Analytical meditation. Buddha himself, you see, told us, oh monks, sort of a follower of Buddha, he said, he advised us, you should not accept my teaching out of faith, out of devotion, but rather thorough investigation and experiment.
His Holiness attested that he is the follower of one such tradition that encourages scientific way of thinking and analyzing rather than promoting blind faith in that religion. Due to his advancing age, His Holiness the Dalai Lama has cut down significantly on his travels abroad in recent times. However, he continues to meet and interact with people from all over the world at his residence. A high-level United States Congressional delegation on a 2-day trip to Dharamshala wrapped up their short trip on the resounding note of continued support and solidarity with the Tibetan people. During the visit, the members of the delegation, led by Chairman of House Democracy Partnership Congressman David Price and co-chair Vern Buchanan, met with Tibetan spiritual leader His Holiness the Dalai Lama, the President of Central Tibetan Administration Dr. Lobsang Sengye and his cabinet members, the Speaker and Deputy Speaker and members of Standing Committee of Tibetan Parliament in Exile, and the staff of Central Tibetan Administration. Commenting on the hour-long meeting and the luncheon reception the delegation had with Tibetan spiritual leader His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Congressman David Price said that the meeting with His Holiness the Dalai Lama was one of the best takeaways of their official tour that took them to East Timor and Indonesia before visiting Dharamshala. We wanted to pay our respect and express our gratitude to His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the Tibetan people for the inspiration they have been to us and to the entire world, said Congressman David Price. Prior to meeting His Holiness the Dalai Lama, the delegation had an hour-long meeting with President Dr. Lobsang Sengye and the members of his cabinet. Congressman David Price affirmed his and the delegation's solidarity with Tibet and Tibetans in preservation of Tibetan religion and culture. He assured to provide all the necessary assistance and support for the cause of Tibet to the best of their abilities. The Tibetan Parliament in Exile, led by Speaker Pema Chungne, also met the United States Congressional Delegation, who took a tour of the Parliament Hall and then had a brief meeting with the Standing Committee members of Tibetan Parliament in Exile. As part of the final official engagement before wrapping up their tour, the Central Tibetan Administration offered a grand reception. Heads of the three pillars of democratic Tibetan administration in exile, representatives of the three autonomous bodies of the Central Tibetan Administration, Kaluns of various Central Tibetan Administration departments, officials and the staff filled the auditorium at the T building to pay their respect and express their gratitude to the Congressional delegation. The President, in his welcome address, said the presence of such high-level Congressional delegation in Dharamshala is sending a strong positive message to Beijing that democracy is inevitable and universal.
And you have sent a message to Beijing and to the capital city of Tibet, Lhasa, that democracy is inevitable, democracy is universal. And the Chinese government says, they talk about Asian values and cultural relativism, that there might not be democracy in some countries or some community or some culture, but Tibetan democracy in exile proves it otherwise, that democracy is universal.
We in the United States Congress are particularly proud of the long partnership between the United States and the Central Tibetan Administration and with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. The United States government, through USAID and the State Department, will continue the work with the Tibetan communities in Nepal and India to improve their livelihoods, to preserve traditional culture and religion and language, to improve the ability of the CTA to represent and provide services to the people, and to train the next generation of leaders.
Said Congressman David Price, while adding that support of the United States aid and the State Department will continue for Tibetan communities in India and Nepal to improve their livelihood, including preservation of their culture, religion and language. The visit of this United States Congressional delegation to Dharamshala was particularly facilitated and encouraged by Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the United States House of Representatives, who led a similar high-level United States Congressional delegation to Dharamshala in 2017. The delegation departed for United States on Sunday last week. That is all for this week. See you in the next edition of Tibet This Week. Have a nice weekend.